What's up, everybody? Welcome into yet another edition of the Baseline Jumper podcast. My name is Jason Goldstein, and on the line with me right now is a man who abused my puns on our prep call, Mr. Ben McDonald, or Ben McCore. I don't know what to call you tonight.
Ben McCore, huh? I'm not sure what. I don't know if people even know what you're going for in there, but I like it. Ben McCore doesn't sound half bad. I sound like an artist or maybe a movie producer. That's what I'm going with. But I'm happy to be here, Jason. Um, for those at home who can't see us, we're air hugging across our Skype platform, and it's a beautiful, loving hug.
Yes, we had an air hug because Ben texted me and said he was going to be late to our prep call and then ended up being earlier than me, so we air hugged. And that is your peek behind the curtain this week, folks. But let's talk some hoops, man, because there's a lot going on around the association right now. There was a 14-game marathon on Martin Luther King Day where a lot of businesses were closed and you were just able to stay home and watch some hoops. Now, did you have to work yesterday? Because I had to work from home for like half a day.
I had yesterday off, but I ended up catching up on my long list of things to do during most of yesterday. So I did not watch as much hoops as I would have liked, but it is a wonderful day in celebration of obviously an incredible man and a great day of basketball to boot.
Yeah, there were some doozies, but I think the two games that stand out were Celtics-Lakers, in which Boston absolutely dominated the Lakers, and they're starting to get back healthy after we talked about what's not on last week's show. Anthony Davis set to return to the lineup, but the Celtics just outmatched them. I don't know whether it was the fatigue of flying east and being 3 hours ahead, but the Lakers have that long road trip where they're at the Garden and they play at Brooklyn, so they're kind of just barreling through the Atlantic Division, and that was not a good start. They have the Sixers this week as well. So just a wall-to-wall dominant performance by the Boston Celtics. But I think the one game that I was watching as I was trying to drift off to sleep last night was that Warriors-Trailblazers game in which D'Angelo Russell looked like a magician out there, and he was outdueled by Dame Dalla. Game went into overtime, and Portland, who needs every win that it can get right now, ends up getting an overtime victory over the Dubs. 61 points for Dame. I mean, I think that's the new highest scoring output on the season. I mean, do you have any thoughts on Dame and him trying to kind of single-handedly get the Blazers back into postseason contention?
Well, I hope he keeps it up. He's on my fantasy basketball team, so I sincerely wish him the best. I'm hoping that he continues to play the way he's playing because it's helping me out, and that has been a delight. It's been an absolute delight having him on my team and carrying me along for parts of the season. So I hope he keeps it up. I mean, I don't know if I'm not sure it matters. I mean, we have seen the Lakers be a little bit more inconsistent, I guess, with some of the injuries. I mean, but in reality, they're still 8-2 in their last 10, even with the Davis injury. So it's hard to feel like the 1-8 this year is going to be much of anything. I mean, I think we're starting to see a little bit of separation where there's a top 6 in the West, and so it's hard to really feel great about the 7 and 8 seeds. Although I think the Thunder are making a case that they're a pretty good team and they're kind of distancing themselves. But ultimately, it feels like whoever gets that 8 seed is just going to turn into roadkill in the first round, although it feels to me like this is a kind of Spursy thing. It just they're incredible. I don't know how they do it, but they just Jason Voorhees their way into that 8 spot. Every year you just think that they're finally done and they just come back to life. You can run them over with a truck. You can throw a hairdryer in the bathtub and they'll still come back around. So this is just another example of Pop somehow turning it around. So to me, Jason, as good as Dame is, it just feels like the Spurs are inevitable.
Look, we've been recording for 5 minutes and you've already made 3 serial killer analogies. Should I be worried about you? I really don't like where this show is going in the first 5 minutes.
Taking a dark turn. Yeah.
Well, be that as it may, I was saying this win, for Boston, I think says more about the Celtics than it does about the Lakers. Look, they're going to have bad games. No one goes 82-0, flying across the country. Like I said before, it's the logistics of the NBA schedule. But Celtics are really good, and I just think it was a very good moral victory that counts in the standings for Portland. I think those were the two games that really stood out on Monday. You had a few others that were close. You had Nets Sixers, you had Kings Heat. That was a close one, but those were the two that just really stuck out, or what was a marquee day for the NBA. So just wanted to highlight those. I know Ben is glued to his couch watching basketball 99% of the time, so we had to get that out there. But for those of you listening, Ben is not a serial killer. He's a nice, young, handsome, married man that just makes a couple of weird references every once in a while to supplement my dad joke influx.
Oh man. Well, you know what? Something on a more positive side, Jason, since I don't want to continue with this dark turn, is we talked about it last week that it might happen before this show,
I think we
but
talked about it for 2 weeks.
it's been one of those things that we're just excited to see happen. This season has been, I'm not going to say disappointing, but there's been, a lot of kind of letdowns due to injuries. A lot of the televised games have not really been what people expected. And I feel like there hasn't been quite as much excitement. Unless you're a Lakers fan, this season has been a, a little bit of a downer for a bunch of franchises. The Celtics and the Lakers are both happy. Everyone else has been kind of, it's fine. It's not the best thing. And now we have Zion. He's the present beneath the Christmas tree. Jason, he's the N64 you open when you're however old, 8 years old, and you lose your mind. This is Zion. It looks like he's going to come back for tomorrow. I don't want to count my blessings yet, Jason, but I mean, what do you think about Zion coming back? And don't look now, Jason, but your Pelicans, who you felt pretty good about, they're only 3.5 games behind those Memphis Grizzlies, Jason.
That's what I'm saying, man. I was dead wrong about the Atlanta Hawks, who currently sit about 9 games back of the eighth seed. So I'll take that L. But the Pelicans, I'm still feeling fairly confident about JJ Redick's playoff streak. The one thing I will say to young Zion is he gets set for his debut on Wednesday. So if you're listening to this on your way to work on Wednesday, just know that Zion Williamson makes his NBA debut tonight. And I just read something that said, he's in for a sleepless night. Listen, boy, you better get some shut-eye because you are in for an absolute gauntlet. And I think that Gentry will have him on somewhat of a minutes restriction, but I think this return is coming at a perfect time. I don't know if you can believe this, Ben, but we're halfway through the regular season. A lot of teams have played anywhere from 40 to 43 games, so we're halfway home already. It's amazing how fast this season's flying. Feels like it was just yesterday we were doing our sixth division previews, which included a lot of Zion talk because he played in the preseason. But I think this is coming at a perfect time for a New Orleans team that in their last 10 games has been playing really well, 6-4 in their last 10, 3.5 games back of the eighth seed in a crowded playoff field out west. But with the way the Pels are shooting the ball, and they've been on the losing end of some crap calls and some crap losses where they could have easily won those games. But in their last game, they made 21 threes. So with the way they're shooting from deep, it's only going to make the Pelicans better once Zion comes, gets comfortable, gets his legs under him. I think it's going to help their inside-out game. You're going to see guys like Drew Holiday and J.J. Redick start to improve their shooting numbers with the way Brandon Ingram's playing, a perfect complement to Zion. Now, Zion just has to prove that he's worth the hype. Now, I'm going to give him a large sample size, Ben, because, if he scores 12 to 14 points a game in his first three, just getting his legs under him, getting used to the flow of an NBA game because the preseason does not count. I want to see him in the long term, ease him in, and just let him showcase his talent. And I want to see what he looks like at his current playing weight, too, because I think long term that will pose a problem for him. But right now, I just want to see him get on the court, get healthy, and see what he can do for the Pels.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm really excited for, and I've talked about this since the preseason, I'm excited to watch Zion play small ball five. Derek Favors and Jackson Hayes just don't give the Pelicans much on offense. I mean, they just don't. Derek Favors is averaging 9.8 points a game. Jackson Hayes, 8.7. I mean, both guys are great rim runners. They definitely offer that part of the game. But they're not dynamic offensive players. Now, Favors is a guy who's good defensively. He can do a lot of things well. He's still averaging almost a double-double, excuse me, with points and rebounds. So, I mean, obviously key cog for this team. But when we get to see the Pelicans run out a lineup with Ball, Holiday, JJ Redick, the now hot shooting Ingram, and Zion, that is going to be dynamic basketball, Jason. I mean, that is going to be really fun to watch because Lonzo Ball has kind of under the radar been playing a lot better of late. He's had some really impressive games, particularly in the month of January and the new year. For January, in fact, Jason, his averages are 15, 9, and 7.5 with points, assists, and rebounds. I mean, he's been a guy who has really been doing a lot of things on the floor. And if you look at what Ingram's been able to do, and particularly his shooting ability, if you imagine those guys along with Holiday and a lights out shooter like Redick flanking Zion, it's hard to imagine how teams are going to defend that five, and it's just going to make for a lot more fun. And finally, we get to kind of see what we're looking for coming into the season. So I think that's really fun. I think the biggest question though is, I mean, does this put them in the driver's seat for the 8th seed, Jason, and maybe even more? I mean, do you think that they even have a chance to move up the standings even further, given kind of how good we're expecting Zion to be? Do you think they have a chance to make some noise and make the playoffs?
Based on my prediction before the year, obviously I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to look at this objectively to start. Okay? This kid is a 19-year-old rookie. He's going to be 20. Okay? And at that weight that he's currently playing at, I think it's going to pose a problem. So I want to give the Pelicans some time to adjust. Now, before the year, I said, if they get in, it'll be as the A seed, and I think, they'll be a contender quicker than most people think, especially if they give Brandon Ingram a max deal this coming summer, which in all likelihood they're probably going to do. They have to try and find a contract for Drew Holiday because I don't think you can have Lonzo Ball as the focal point of your offensive sets. I think you need a veteran there. Like Drew, much like Derek Favors, will serve as a mentor to Zion. So I'm not going to go as far and say, at least on this current podcast, that they'll move up to, 5, 6, 7. I think 8's perfect. If they go on a run just to kind of vault past a lot of these teams ahead of them, I mean, they have to get past Phoenix, Portland, San Antonio, Memphis, OKC, because the top 6, I think, are virtual locks to make the playoffs, and I'm including Dallas in there. So it remains to be seen for me. I think they could get into the playoffs as the 8th seed, but moving up, I'm not so sure, at least right now.
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it, and that's kind of what I'm thinking as well. Although I'm just really interested to see. I think the biggest piece for them is going to be, really now they have some building blocks, and I think
a lot of building blocks.
Well, I mean, the thing that's really impressive to me is how well Ingram has played and how he's kept it up, because if his skill set that he's showing right now is for real, if he's this guy, if this is really his NBA future, and again, let's also keep in mind how young Ingram is. Ingram is only 22 years old, and he's 22, turning 23 at the beginning of next season or a little before next season. So it's not like he's gonna creep over the age limit here. I mean, you look at between him and Zion, you have two of the young potential stars in the league, and the way that Ingram has done it this year, as a guy who can really shoot the ball better than he has his entire career, he suddenly looks like a much better fit next to Zion. And that, I think, if you're in the Pelicans front office, or you're just a Pelicans fan or a basketball fan, you've got to be really encouraged by that, because suddenly, you have this kind of Swiss Army knife in Drew Holiday, who can do a lot of things, who can really play the 1 or the 2. Now you've got Ingram, who can kind of play the 3 or the 4, and then you have Zion, who can kind of play the 4 or the 5, and suddenly you have a very flexible team. So I think it's a really exciting time to be a Pelicans fan, and it's nice for them to get some good news here, obviously after Davis leaving. But, I mean, other than that, Jason, do you have any other thoughts on this Pelicans team and the race for the 8th seed in the West?
I just want to say this quickly. Lonzo Ball was quoted as saying, look, I've been around Ingram for 3 years, and his work ethic is just second to none. And I think that's also helping Lonzo mature as both a young player and a person now that he's out of the friendly confines of the Los Angeles area, playing in New Orleans and having his friends there. But I'm going to say Brandon Ingram could wind up being an all-star reserve, and Zion's got some serious all-star potential. So we'll see if he can live up to that hype that has pegged him pretty much since he committed to Duke. But speaking of all-star, since we're